everybody, it's Ari with CraftQuest, and today we're going to be talking about query catastrophes and how to avoid them. Justine.
Hi, I'm Justine. I am a YA fantasy writer and an editor, and I work with the Inkwell Council, which gives free edits for the first 3 chapters of your story. Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan. I do a lot of things. So I'm a Pitch Wars mentor for this year. I'm an intern at the Corvisiero agency. I'm also part of Inkwell, which Justine just explained. And I edit and I write and I read a bunch of stuff. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hi, I'm Kelly Peterson. I'm a literary agent with Corvisiero Literary. Yeah, that's about it. That's my life. So, yeah. You all muted yourselves.
And Ari, who are you? Ari's muted. Give her a minute. She got stuck on mute.
Technical problems, guys.
Okay.
There she is.
I'm Ari. I am from CraftQuest. I am also a book blogger, a booktuber, and a writer of various genres. I usually fantasy and science fiction are my main ones. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
Should I give out the questions since Maria's not here?
Yes, that is your job today.
Okay, so our first question for today is what must be included within a query letter? Now, I know that this seems like standard information, but we need to know exactly what has to be in there so that people know what has to be in there. So go on. Kelly.
Yeah, I actually just did a workshop for this in Philadelphia Writers' Day workshops, actually. But no, so your basics are like basically your hook, which is going to be your genre, your word count, your title, your comp titles, as well as your age range, obviously. And then kind of like the meat of your story, which should be about 3 paragraphs, maybe 2 if you can cut it shorter. But that tells you kind of like who your character is, what they're doing, what the stakes are in the inciting incident. And basically, like I said, the meat of your story. So you want like the beginning kind of plot to kind of unravel itself in that query. But never the ending. You don't want the ending. You want to leave it open so that we can kind of be enticed into reading more. So you want to leave that open. So 2 or 3 paragraphs is usually what you want. And then at the end, usually a bio. So yeah, but for the most part, that's about it. And all of that like varies by story, by what you're writing, by who you are. And you can definitely put the hook at the bottom or at the top. And I always tell people, I'm like, the meat of your story should mostly and needs to include, which everyone always forgets, voice. So you should basically act like you're writing your book. So this should have the same voice that your manuscript has within your query, as well as the inciting incident, which a lot of people also forget. So why is your character doing this? What is their goal? What should they be doing, or why is it failing? And their stakes. A lot of people forget your stakes. Don't forget your stakes. Why is your character doing this? What's the issue? Why are they kind of going after this? And what will happen if they fail? So, because that's your driving reason for your character doing this. And a lot of people forget that in a query. But yeah, I know. That's the basics, at least.
One thing I always like, because I think that people get like jammed up in that meat part. But I try to always look at it as, think of writing a back of the book blurb for your own book. This way you're getting, and I'm sorry, I feel like I'm echoing. I hear an echo.
You're not for me if it makes
okay, sorry if you guys are picking up an echo. But yeah, so try to do it like you're doing a movie trailer a little bit for your story, and explain it and entice people into wanting to know what happens with those questions of how these people will, how this main character will get out of the problem that they found themselves into without being too cheesy, obviously. But you want to try to build this idea, like draw people in when you're writing that part. Because that's the exciting part of the query is what is this book about and what does it have to offer? Oh,
Yeah.
and don't try to talk about how spectacular your writing is compared to everyone else, and that you're the best writer in the world, and no one's buying that.
We'll get to that.
I've seen it, and it just makes people go, huh. Okay, I'll be good, and we'll say that later. Megan.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, Kelly did a good job, and I guess the other thing, I mean, Kelly just got it, but okay. Other thing is like, don't make your query letter. Like, I know this isn't going in the don't part, but also like, the query is not supposed to be your bio. So when you're querying, like, knowing about you is cool, but your story needs to take precedence over who you are, because I mean, that's what you're trying to get people excited about. It's cool if you have a cool life, like that's awesome, but we need to know about your story and your characters and why they're doing things and like why we should want to read more. And if we don't want to read more, then that's a problem. So it needs to be a focus on your character and your story. And, you can include some stuff about you at the end, but that's not the main focus of the query.
This is not an online dating profile. It is not about you. It's about your story.
And I feel like if you don't have enough to like drag people into wanting to read the story, then all of that cool stuff about your life isn't going to really matter, because no one's going to want to read your story as much as they may like you and think you're cool and want to meet you. That doesn't matter when it comes to publishing a book.
And a lot of people kind of forget that, like, if you can't complete your query, if you don't have enough like information for your query, then your story probably is not as good as you think it is. In all honesty, same thing with synopses. I'm like, if you write a synopsis and you're kind of like, oh, I don't know what my inciting incident is, or, oh, I don't know what my climax is, or my rising action. Well, that's a problem. That means your story is not very great because you don't have any forward drive for your characters.
Is it my turn? Well, it could be a little like dating. You're setting your book up for a blind date, but yeah. But I guess what I would add is just that this kind of encroaches on the don't, but tailor it for that agent. Like some agents prefer do your research, I guess. Do your research on the agent and how they prefer to be approached with queries. Because I know some that prefer a more formal approach where you don't like jump immediately into the story, whereas a lot of others do. So doing your research on that agent and what they prefer, and even whether they represent your genre before you even send the letter, is like key to success. Because if you don't know them and what they want and how they prefer to be approached, you're kind of failing before you even get there. So that's my 2 cents, because everyone else covered everything else. So
we were just talking before we started about like the just immense numbers of queries that come in. And so if you're not following basic like rules, or not researching, or like spelling the name wrong of the person that you're submitting to, which I've seen happen, or like just general like little screw ups like that, you're shooting yourself in the foot, because in a sea of available people, you want to do everything as right as you can to get through the first door. And if you're like screwing up out of the gate, that's not going to help you at all.
Yeah. I told my class, go ahead.
I was just going to say really quick that it's really important to understand that there are lots of other people, other writers who are probably just as at your level and have other book ideas. So it's really important to make yourself stand out as much as possible. And part of that is by approaching the query letter in that professional manner and by doing it correctly for that agent, because you want to show that you're willing to be professional and that you can do that. And that's how you can stand out as well. Kelly, go ahead.
Yeah. I told my class when I was teaching this that just following the rules and making sure that you have basic formatting, you're already like 95% in front of everyone else, just because of the fact that most people don't follow rules. They don't follow formatting questions and guidelines and things like that. So just following those basics, you're already ahead of the game. So, and part of making yourself stand out too is including the voice in your like query. If you can include your voice in your query, that means that you have some really strong voice in your manuscript, and that's something that I want to read. And it's also about making an agent or a publisher realize that you are the only person who can write this book too. So within your bio or within your story, so like, why is it your story to tell? Are you the only person who can actually write this? You know, make them want you. Because if you're not the only person who can write this, we've seen this 1,000 times before, then we don't want you. You know, you need to make yourself stand out. And part of that is by voice. And the other part is by realizing and showcasing that you're the only person who can write this. And that doesn't mean just saying like, oh, hey, I don't know. I've read Tolkien 1,000 times, so I'm the only person who can write this story. And you're like, no, that's not how that goes. But making sure that your characters and your query and your story are all unique and individualized and creative, and it's come from you in itself. And why is it different? Why are the stakes different than anything else? Why is the book different than anything else? Because in publishing, what's happened is that we've all read so many books, so many stories, so many manuscripts, that every single manuscript that you end up writing is actually a product of every single book that you've read before. So you take bits and pieces of these stories and put them together to form your own, which is phenomenal, which is what you should do. That's where comp titles come in handy, right? But when you're actually writing it for you and writing your own story, we want to know why you're the person who can write this. So why is it your own? How is it different than everything else that's on the market right now? And why should we take that on?
And the next question is, what additional material should accompany the query letter? So these are just like the standard package of materials that we want people to know that they should bring with them or send to you.
Yeah, so basically every agency is a little bit different, and I tell people to constantly kind of prep for all possibilities, but usually a synopsis is 1 to 2 pages, so you need a synopsis with your query always. I would create a 1-page one as well as a 2-page one, and that way you have it on hand at all times if you need to submit a query. You also should be prepped and ready to submit both a 5-page and a 10-page sample, because agencies will ask for both. Sometimes you'll get lucky and you'll go to a conference and they'll ask for partials too, which can be up to, 50 pages, 100 pages, 35 pages. It can be any random number. But with your query, you should only include synopsis and pages, and any kind of maybe proposal. If you're a nonfiction writer, you should have a proposal. Please do not include pictures. Please do not include, like an entire life story. There's so many things that you don't need to include that people include for whatever reason they feel fits, especially pictures, especially if it's nonfiction or it's based off of real life. We don't need to see pictures of anything, please, dear God.
So, on Inkwell, we do a thing where we'll like find agency tweets and then we'll retweet them and go, things today and things not to do in your query. So we'll get around with that, but that was one of them. I think at one point it was submitting a bunch of pictures. Another one, my favorite was, I think hitting on the agent, was another one. Don't flirt with your agent. That's not what they're there for. But when you're, don't query a manuscript that's not ready. So if you're, yes, you should have your 5 pages and your 10 pages super hyper polished and ready to go. But that doesn't mean that the rest of your book is like half done. Because for all you know, that person, the other day I got a rejection in 3 minutes, which I've never seen before in my life. But I happened to send this thing in, and it was a nice rejection. It wasn't a bad rejection. It's just they had something that was very similar. So it was just like a super freaking fast rejection. I happened to get this person while they were sitting at their computer, like looking at their inbox, and they saw it and they went, no, sorry, that fast. But if they'd said that and said, send me a partial, that would be crazy because the timing. But imagine if that had happened and my book wasn't done. I would be screwed, or wasn't like edited, something like that. So you want to make sure that before you start throwing your stuff out there, you're at the point where, yeah, okay, maybe you're going back and, oh, yeah, fix a couple of words here and there, or, oh, let me rewrite that one paragraph, but not like, oh, there's a big systemic issue in this story that I still need to look through. Because if you're at that point, you're going to have a problem if someone makes a request. So that's my added 2 cents.
By the way, I've done, and I've sat there and I've been like, I kind of feel really bad for either rejecting this person within 5 minutes or even like requesting things. But I've requested things within like a couple of minutes of getting it because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Like, this is perfect timing. This is great. And then I didn't get any kind of partial or anything for like a month or two. And by then I had just completely forgotten about it. Like,
yeah, see, that's what you don't want to happen. While it's still fresh in your head, you want to be like, okay, sure, and send it back over. Like, yeah, that would totally dumb things up.
Yes. And when like, okay, so when I'm reading too, like if I'm reading a partial and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have to know what the rest of this is. And I'm immediately like, okay, like you need to send me this full. You need to send me this full. Or I'm like reading the 5 pages. And I'm like, oh, this is so good. I'm like, if you don't send that to me within like a day, it is fully out of my brain. And not to put a bad rep on agents, like we have so much we do that it just like we're constantly multitasking. But when I see that come in within 24 hours, I'm like, yes, stop everything, read. So the faster you can get that in, the more prepped you can get that, trust me, it's definitely worth it.
I think it's important though, like just as a side thing, that to mention that agents aren't just reading your queries. Just because I've seen people who go, oh, this taking so long. Oh, what takes them so long to get through their queries? Isn't that what they're supposed to be doing? And it's like, no. They have to also represent their clients. They're also doing things like you're doing today, right? Or classes or conferences. Like, it's not just, oh, okay, well, they're here to read the query box. Like, because that's something I've seen where queries take a long time and people are like, I don't understand why queries take a long time.
Yeah, no. And I've told people before, and I was telling my classes the other day, I get about 600 queries in 2 months. And I spend days going into New York meeting with editors. I spend days on the phone. I spend days responding to emails. I spend days like doing random organizational things, making sure contracts are in order, talking to legal, talking to all sorts of things. Like even just getting paperwork in order takes so long. And it's just a matter of like I still have edits that I need to do for, my clients. I still have to read like new manuscripts coming in from them. Plus my query box is like the last thing on every agent's mind. And it's not because we don't want to find new talent. It's because our clients have to come first. And everything else in that matter, like it just trickles down. And the query box, unfortunately, just comes last. And that's why we really love it when we find something that's amazing. But it takes a while to get to because we literally have to find time and put aside contracts and our clients and reading everything else that we need to do and organizing everything to get our lives in order. It takes a while, definitely.
Meg, do you have anything to add? Because I've totally trampled over this whole part.
I mean, not particularly. I mean, I think for query submission and all that stuff, simpler is better. You don't send unnecessary things, follow agent guidelines, be respectful, make sure you're addressing agents as how they should be, how they want to be addressed. And don't just focus, I think, a lot on your book and what makes your book special. Instead of trying to, in your query or synopsis, whatever, sell your book for being the best well-written book ever, or things sell your book for the voice and the plot and the materials that you're actually supposed to send versus trying to justify in your query or your synopsis why it's the best book ever. So that's why I kind of say simpler is better. If you just follow guidelines, trust me, you'll get a lot further than people who try to do other things, because when agents see you try to send pictures or hit on your agent or any number of things that never end, really. You're just kind of you're trampling over people who are actually doing the right stuff, but also you're just not setting a good example. And agents will remember if you try to do those things and try to query later. So simpler is better, and that's really all I can add to that.
I also wanted to, what, me and Ari are fighting for the mic.
Let me go first, or I'll forget.
Sorry, I keep talking.
I just want to add that, you really want, as everyone here said, you want to sell your voice and your story. If you try to pull the wool over the agent's eyes or get around it with some loopholes, at least for me, this is my opinion, like if someone were to approach me and do that, it makes me wonder why they have to do that. Is there something wrong with their writing that they're not confident, that it can't sell, that they have to do all this extra stuff to get me to like them? So really, I think the focus, as everyone said, should be on the simple, researched, well put together query that has the voice, instead of focusing your energies on wooing the agent. Agents are fickle, but in a lovely way. Show them your value through the work, your story's value. I think that that's far more honorable in terms of publishing. Sorry. Okay, Justin.
It's actually almost exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say your work should speak for itself. You shouldn't have to put a bunch of bells and whistles. The meat of your story, the way you convey it in your query should be enough. And your pages, if you're sending pages along, some people only want query letters. So, but if you're sending those pages and those synopsis, that should speak for your story. You shouldn't need to do anything extra special to stand out. Like no weird fonts, none of that, no, because I've seen Comic Sans fonts on query letters. Don't do that. Don't do that. Professional.
I had a manuscript come in with a gray background. Okay, please don't do that. It's terrible. It's horrifying.
Double space.
It was painted gray with green font. Just don't do it. I can't read any better, and also I'm horrified. Okay, just white paper, nice margins, Times New Roman font, double space, please, thank you. No weird spacing. Okay, that is the end. Goodbye now.
Well, I love you, Megan. I love you. You said everything that I deeply believe in.
What about
I'm sorry. Wait, gray and green? I'm having a hard time.
Oh yeah, the background of the pages were gray and the font was green. I could not undo the background.
That sounds impossible to read. That's just
it really was. Don't do it.
No colors, white and black. No weird.
You know what's good to emphasize things? Italics. That's it.
And don't use them for everything. Yes. Do not, I swear to gosh, if I count, I'm weird about this, guys. If I count more than 10 italics in a paragraph, there's something wrong. Something deeply, deeply wrong.
Okay, wait, also something I've seen a lot of in just Inkwell submissions, which our thing is that we like to get people ready for submission. So we'll read those first few pages that tend to go out to agents. So I'll get things that have wacko formatting on it, like they're trying to make it look like a book. So interesting images on the chapter titles and stuff like that. And don't submit that to an agent. I'm always highlighting that and being like, take this out.
It'll look like a book if it becomes a book. It'll look like a book if it becomes a book. Please don't make it a book. Thank you.
If anyone has no idea how to format your book, the Science Fiction Writers of America have a nice little section that just has a standard format that seems to be the format that everywhere normally conforms to. They have it all spelled out in nice bold letters and a picture in case you don't understand. It's really important because we're visual creatures, and the first thing I'm going to see if I open up manuscript is how weird the font looks. I can tell by looking if something's Times New Roman and if it's not, because I just type in that all the time. Do not make it cursive or fancy. Don't make the chapter head size 24. Just common sense and
no images.
No images.
It drives me nuts. They're these little doohickeys surrounding chapter 1, and I'm no. Just don't make anything more difficult for the people reading it than it needs to be. And if that doesn't print right, or something goes wrong when you're transferring it over, some people have the paste thing in their submission box. If you're pasting that in, what if that paste's weird? then how does
It
that
opens that.
agent?
I will
Like,
tell you that now. When you copy something and paste it over, whatever background color you have, if it's not like hashtag 00000, if it's anything above or below, you can actually tell. And when you paste it in there, it actually screws up all the formatting because you're putting like a different formatting within that formatting. And then the computer goes, well, I don't know what you want. So it messes everything up. So just simpler is, we'll go with Megan here. Simpler is better. Just,
and a lot of times, all of the chapter headers or extra pictures and things like that you see in books were put in by the publisher. It's not you. I like most of the time, authors actually don't have a lot of say over what their book looks like or how it's done or what's put in as chapter headers. You know, a lot of like really good publishers try to include the author, but they don't usually have the final say. So anything like that will just be taken out anyway. You might as well just not use it. I like let your story speak for itself, because any kind of, you know, nice illustrations you have for chapter headers or any kind of extra like page number things you have, or, you know, it's not needed because it's going to be taken out anyway. Oh man. And please, like, no, we are not.
The only pictures that should be happening are in your mind, okay? There's some wisdom for today, all right?
Listen, you haven't seen the worst of it. You haven't seen the worst of it until you get someone who, I don't know, just like, okay, so being Corvisiero and being what we are, like we've had some erotica or something of the sort submitted to us that's semi-fictional or semi-autobiographical, and we get pictures. We get pictures with these submissions. It's part of the reason we changed over to like Query Manager, because this is just don't send pictures. Just don't do it. Just don't do it.
Wait a minute. They're sending you naughty pictures.
Not necessarily naughty, although some people have made that mistake, which is just bad. Don't do that. Like, that is horrible. Please do not, for the love of God, do that. But like, even just pictures of you, like, here's my author photo, like semi-autographical, like erotica. Hey, I'm here. You're like, no. Like, no, just leave it alone. Just don't send me pictures. We don't want to know. Like, even if you're a fantasy writer, we don't need to know what you look like. Not until we want to sign you. And even then, we really don't need to know what you look like. In all honesty, your writing should speak for itself. Just let it speak for itself.
Kelly, do you want to put no pictures in your Twitter bio?
Please don't send me pictures. But luckily, I'm not usually the one who gets them. I don't represent erotica or anything like that. But it's just, man, some of the stories that I can tell you from when we used to have like our actual like query at Corvisiero email and not Query Manager, since you can't attach anything. Yeah, also, things paste weirdly into Query Manager. So for those of you who are pitching to agents who are using Query Manager, things paste in really weirdly. And usually you can't change the color. It won't do that. But if you change the formatting, it will paste in oddly. So make sure that your formatting is correct. And I definitely want to add Jane Friedman is awesome to go to as a resource, as well as Writer's Digest, as well as Susan Denard, whom all three of them are absolutely wonderful resources for if you're looking for like query tips or how to format or anything of the sort.
Other query tip for Query Manager, at least, put the amount of pages that they tell you to put in there. Don't try to put more, because it will cut you off. And there have been cases where your query, well, not your queries, but your pages don't actually show up. So if it says 5 pages, that's all you need to do. Just do another tip.
Yeah.
And
I've also...
wait, just real quick. Do not try to single space it to cut the pages or to make it look smaller. It's just...
Query Manager knows all.
No.
Query Manager knows if you submit to the same person when you're not supposed to. Query Manager knows if you submit to someone else in the another agent in the agency when you weren't supposed to. Query Manager knows if you don't write in how many words you have. Query Manager does know a lot.
It's essentially the god of
literary. Query Manager is wonderful because we can actually link our accounts within the agency, so we can easily like send queries to and from each other. But the other like beautiful thing about that is that we can set agency standards. So we can set certain flags or individual flags for word count. So if you're above, 130,000 words, you get a red flag. Or if you're below 30,000 words, you get a red flag. Or if it's a genre we don't represent, you get a red flag. And it's also beautiful because as soon as we open your query, there are tabs that literally say, like, okay, so here's the query, here's the stuff about the author, any attachments, if there are any comments or anything like that. And then there's this little tab on the end that says repeats. And usually if you've repeated sending to anyone else within the linked accounts in the agency, it'll have a nice big circle with a big number in it. And I can just click and see every single person that you've sent it to within the agency and whether they rejected it or not, as well as what they said to you. So if you've sent to all 10 of us at Corvisiero, I can see it and I can see every single thing that they have said to you. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Kelly is watching you all, just so you know.
I see you, all of you. Query manager is God. So, and also, I highly suggest, because this started out as making your query stand out, right? That's what we were talking about. I think.
It was query etiquette. So it all
we didn't officially move on.
Technically, we were talking about what to include with your query, and we ended up with query manager is God and Kelly can see you.
And then it naturally moved into the direction of etiquette. So let's just officiate this right now. Now we are talking about standard querying etiquette. Things you do and things you don't do. And we're going to combine it with the following question of fatal mistakes that will get you automatic no. So if you want to weave that in, this should be fun.
Yes. And while like half like transitioning, half moving on, this kind of goes with everything I've said before. Especially if you have cross genre or if you have a manuscript that kind of crosses into both. So say you're writing, a fantasy that dips into like that thriller-esque world, something like that. I highly suggest actually creating two queries, two different ones. So a lot of you don't know that agents actually create queries and pitches for ourselves to pitch to editors. And what I do a lot of the time is, depending on the kind of emphasis I can put on different things within a query or within a manuscript, I create two different queries, or maybe even three sometimes, depending on what an editor is looking for. So if you have an agent that's more prone to taking on thrillers, then you want to cater that query, still have the same story, but cater it towards the thriller aspect of your book. Or if it's more fantasy and, you're looking at a fantasy agent, you want to cater that then to a fantasy agent. So rather than kind of creating one and hoping they like it, cater it. I'm like, personalize it. So if you're querying me with like a fantasy thriller, you're probably going to emphasize the fantasy part. Like, love thrillers and all, but fantasy is kind of my go-to, So you're going to want to make all of those aspects stand out as opposed to the thriller aspect. Whereas if you're querying someone else, you're going to write a different query depending on how they actually like view what they want or what kind of stories they represent and things like that. So I highly recommend that, definitely. But yeah, query etiquette. All right, let's go. All right.
Are you going to start?
Cool. What are we talking about? What to do? What not to do?
What will get you thrown out of the query box?
A lot of things.
Yeah, I figured this would be the perfect time for ranting.
Oh no, I can't rant.
Then Kelly,
this would just be like examples of things that you might have seen that you wish people would avoid because they're not very professional in terms of querying. We've already touched on a few things, but we're looking at like the automatic no, like a thing that would get you an automatic no, which is a lot. So
yeah. There's a lot. And it'll probably all come back to me as you guys are also talking to. A couple of things. If you send me something that's a trigger for me, no. Automatic no. Or if you don't warn me that there's a trigger in there, I'm not too happy about that. If you find my personal work email or my personal email and try to query me through that, or send me an email through that asking me if I want your book. No, I don't want your book. You just hunted me down and it's really creepy and I don't want to hear from you ever again. So don't do that. Don't ever do that. We really recently got an email to all of our emails at Corvisiero, actually, with an extra 427 other agents on there that said, please read, do not delete, like blah, 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 blah. And then this author went on to kind of be like, oh, I'm the best author in the world. Like, you should all want to represent me. Who are you to tell me who to email? I don't understand your policies, your guidelines. All of this stuff is just to limit authors. And I was like, well, all 427 of us just said no and deleted your email because we don't have time to read your entire ranting. So that's an automatic no. That's a definite automatic no. Sending me a manuscript for a genre I don't represent, especially if you try to get it in there by like making it a different genre that's actually available on Query Manager. So if you, try to slip in a random erotica through, a fantasy, that's an automatic no. Absolute automatic no. What else? Oh, word count. Word count. If you're way high above or way below where you should be, we can only skew the word count part so much that after so much time, we don't have the time to dedicate to you to try and cut that down. So if you have a really high or really low word count outside of the boundaries, it's an automatic no. I'm like, no matter how good your writing is, it's an automatic no, because I don't have the time to dedicate to help you cut 30,000, 40,000 words from that. It's not going to happen. You have to do the legwork on that. Unfortunate, but true. I'm trying to think. I'm like, I'm sure I'll think of others as you guys go through and see if you have any on your mind.
Meg, you got anything?
There we go. My mic was not connecting. I have several. One is, okay, so agents vary in policy for this, but with queries, they like to see comp titles. So these are titles that, reflect your book in some way, whether it's by genre or audience or plot, writing. There's a whole bunch of things. And I want to say that the best option if you don't have a comp is to say you don't know, or just leave it out, because by saying certain things like, there is nothing like my book, or I have not researched, or I don't care about comps, that's a no, because I've seen it and it's bad. Let's see. Yeah, other thing is simple, get your agent's name right. It's kind of rude if you don't. Also, please don't submit a query with Dear Agent, because one, it looks like you just auto-emailed it, mail merge, and that's not cool. Not that you need to necessarily, write a big love letter to an agent, but you should at least get their name and know what they want to represent. And even if you want to say why you submitted to them, that's totally cool. But Dear Agent's not. Let's see. Are we just talking about query? We're talking about query, not so much the whole package thing. So I'll just stick to the query. Once again, like I said before, don't make your query about your entire life bio. If you get signed, you can talk about that to your agent later if you really want to. Let's see. Other things that have... Yeah, please also just don't come across in your query as being really arrogant, that your story is the best story ever and no one can ever touch you. And usually throwing out names like Tolkien or J.K. Rowling is probably also not a good idea. No. You should know I think also a good thing is if you want to talk about books that are similar to your query, they should probably be books that are actually in your genre or audience, because that shows that you actually have read a little bit. You don't need to read a lot, just, current reads are good, and it shows you the market and what's going on.
Relatively recent one.
Yeah, 2 years, 3,
You shouldn't be going back to the 90s to get your comp titles. If you are,
let me tell you,
there was a lot of good sci-fi from the 90s. Thank you.
Side point. Okay. Okay. Other things, we're talking about fantasy. First Harry Potter book, 1991. It is over 20 years ago. Okay. Let's just think about that. other query things that I don't. What else is bad for query
Let's
things?
also take a second real quick and
Go.
say, like, do not, under any circumstances, say, well, this person did that, or this published and made a bestseller list. That was 30 years ago. What has like published back then is not published now. Publishing works in cycles. When that cycle comes around, it'll be another 50 years. I don't even know. It's not now. It is not now. I'm like, if I reject you because I don't think it's going to sell, don't come hunt me down and tell me, well, J.K. Rowling sold. I'm like, well, that was 20 years ago. So you can just go find your hole and go right in there and stop leaving. Like, just leave me alone.
Every time you say
don't
that,
hunt me down either.
Every time you say that, I have like an existential crisis. How long ago was Harry Potter?
Justine had the crisis after the video.
I'm so old.
I was like I was in like first grade when the first Harry Potter.
I wasn't even born yet, so don't query that for me.
I don't want to talk to either of you anymore. Okay.
If you really want to creep it up, my husband was in middle school. He's like 10 years older.
Okay, back to query.
Okay. Oh wait,
that's a good detail to not put in your query. There you go.
Okay, I've got one. Don't reply to your query if you get rejected. Don't go, but why didn't I? Why aren't you publishing it? But I don't understand. That's the best thing.
Side note, don't badmouth an agent that rejects you on Twitter or social media because that's also really bad.
We see it.
Yes.
And we will find you. And publishing is a small industry, and we talk.
And she means it. It's like, don't take that as a idle threat. That's like a real thing.
Yeah, we all like to talk with one another because we all love books. It's a really common ground here.
Yeah, we're all like, legitimately, when we say we all talk, we're all friends. Like, publishing is a really small industry, and I'm like, if you burn one bridge, you burn a whole lot more than you think you do. You know, so if you burn a bridge with me, and then my friend is like, oh, I saw this query, and I was like, wait, is that Mark or is that Henry? What is that name? What is that story about? And then they're like, oh, it's this. And I'm like, no, do not. Fair warning. That person badmouthed me all over Twitter, and they will probably badmouth you too. Don't do it. Don't be arrogant. Don't like respond back. And I'm like, it's totally okay if you want to respond with like, thanks for your time, appreciate your feedback. Like, that's fine. We actually kind of, for the most part, like that, especially with like Query Manager, because it just kind of comes in as like a quick little like inbox type of thing. It doesn't clog up our emails with Query Manager because it doesn't go to our emails. But with like, you know, with stuff like that, it's just like, sometimes it's nice to just hear something good and someone be thankful and not hating us because we're supposed gatekeepers. It's actually nice.
It's like when we were talking about edits, was it a couple of videos or last video? But when we were talking about editing, we were saying that you should take a beat before you reply to anything, just because it's hard to process at first. A lot of times editing and rejections on queries can also be, it can hurt. So you don't want to write back as a knee-jerk reaction because you're going to end up saying something dumb. Take a step back, think about it. And I would go by, I mean, generally I would say don't reply because I tend to think that people, but Kelly said differently, but definitely don't reply anything negative. It's not going to change anyone's mind and it's just going to piss people off. Like, there's no point in doing that. You're not helping your career.
The other thing, too, to add to Justine's point is you don't always know why an agent necessarily rejected you. So there could be a case where they rejected you because they had a similar project. They could reject you because, you know, it just wasn't vibing with them for whatever reason, but they still liked your story. I mean, there are like dozens of different reasons why. So you could be getting mad at them because they actually, meanwhile, like they rejected you for like a really sobering or like kind of heartbroken kind of reason. So going up at them and being like, hey, like you suck. Well, now they don't really feel bad anymore.
I mean, my 3-minute rejection was that. It was, oh, I have a project similar or in a similar category to this, so I don't want to compete with myself. That's a totally cool reason to have to reject it. No hard feelings. But if the person doesn't answer specifically that way, that doesn't mean that's not what they were thinking when they rejected it. And sometimes they don't have time to write specific answers. They just say, okay, sorry, I'm going to have to reject this. So don't don't get gummed up in this idea that it means your writing is terrible, like, and then feel defensive. It could just be something like, I can't represent this because the voice was interesting, but it's not my kind of thing. Or, don't take it to heart as this, like, no, I'll never publish. My writing life is over. And so don't get defensive about it. It's a step in the process. It happens to everybody. On to the next agent, as bad as that sounds.
Yeah. And a lot of writers forget that agents are people too. So, if you're writing a book about, I don't know, someone who dies of cancer, or someone who's infected by cancer, or someone who has a sexual abuse case or something of the sort, and it's like triggering for us, or even if we just it's too sad for us to deal with, a lot of times it's just a general pass. Because it's not like we want to tell you oh, here's my life story and this is why I rejected you. We reject people for personal reasons too. So if you have some kind of emotional turmoil or something in your book that is a little bit off-putting for us or sad for us, or, brings up emotions for us in the wrong way, we're not just going to be like, hey, your book sucks, because it's not. That's not the point of that at all. We're probably just going to give a general rejection, because there's nothing for us to say. It's just not vibing with us, because that's not what we want to represent technically. So a lot of people forget that, we're people as well, and we have emotions. And sometimes just a general rejection isn't because, it's bad, and it isn't because we didn't have time to read it, or it isn't because, we didn't give your query a second glance or anything of the sort. Sometimes it's literally just because we have nothing else to say, and we're not going to, tell you our entire life story as to why we rejected you. And a lot of it comes down to, voice as well. If we're just not jiving with your voice, I can't tell you anything else than that. I'm like, if we're just not jiving with your voice, that means we don't have any kind of editing clues for you a lot of the time, because of the fact that it's just not our reader preference to be reading a voice like yours. And that doesn't mean that you can necessarily do anything better or do anything worse. We're just looking at it and we're not feeling it. And that doesn't mean that we can't give you feedback because of the fact that we're just not feeling it. We give feedback for stories that we love, or stories that we can see a vision for. We can't see a vision for voices that we're just not jiving. If anyone else, what are we even talking about right now? We're talking about query etiquette. What are we on?
We're still on query etiquette.
Query etiquette.
We always go off the beaten path, though, so don't feel bad.
I know. I'm I don't even remember what page. What question were we doing?
We were talking about query etiquette and absolute no-nos.
Yeah. If you try to query me without an actual query or without an actual synopsis, that's a no. Or formatting, that's also a no. I'm if you can't even take the time to do the research and write out what you're supposed to do, I can tell you right now that you're not going to be patient enough and work hard enough to actually succeed in this industry. And that is a no from basically every agent possible, because we don't have the time to try and teach you. We don't have the time to make you research. We don't have the time to correct all of the things that you're doing wrong. All right. And if you can't even take the time and the respect for yourself to kind of research a little bit before you send it in, that's one of my biggest pet peeves. Research. It's one of my biggest pet peeves when people just send in oh, I wrote a fantasy thriller. Here's my query. Here's my, book. And their query is literally a sentence long. And their synopsis is this is a fantasy thriller about a girl who dies. Horrible.
Oh, other note, because thank you, Kelly. Please don't make your query and synopsis the same thing. They're not. They're different.
People do this.
The query, yeah, that's a thing. Sorry, Ari, I'm busting your bubble. Yeah, so your query is exactly what Kelly described in the beginning. It's supposed to be, your hook, the introduction of your character and your stakes and, your genre and your word count and all that stuff. Your synopsis is supposed to be what your book is about. So literally event by event of major things that are supposed to be happening, 1 to 2 pages, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. So if you just copy your query into your synopsis, you've not helped anything. I know no more about your book than I did when I read the query. And the synopsis is pretty useful, because sometimes if an agent likes the pages in your query, and they want to see where the story goes, they would need your synopsis to do that. But if there's no synopsis and just their query, they have no idea what route your story is going to take, which can affect the decision if they want more pages from you or not. So please actually do a synopsis. Okay? Okay.
Just to clarify, like I was saying before, as far as the back of the book blurb being what's in your query, you don't know, sorry. Synopsis will contain your ending. You're going to explain all of the major steps in the story. You're not going to have that in your back of the book blurb. The back of the book blurb is like a teaser to draw you in. But the synopsis is more detailed, tells your entire character arc. So it's a huge difference. And so you definitely don't want to paste in the box that says query and synopsis the same exact thing, because they're huge differences. And we go back to research again as to what needs to be in each one of those spaces. So make sure you research and know your craft, know what you're doing. If you're a business person and you're marketing something, you are not doing it you're not making a one-note marketing campaign. You have to do it in different ways. So you need to know all your little steps, and you need to understand what each of them are. And if you're sort of lumping them together, you're making a mistake.
I just want to say real quick that one thing that I see sometimes is when someone declares that this is their genre, but then the book they present is absolutely not. So knowing your genre is really important. That comes in with the research. Even if it's a cross genre, I think sometimes they usually fall more to one than the other. So just reading is a part of research. So if you're telling me that, I don't read this genre, but here's this book in that genre, it will make me wonder if you've actually know how the genre is supposed to work. It's part of research. It's a big pet peeve.
Yeah, one of my biggest pet peeves is actually when people still are, they write about a 12-year-old and young adult. And I'm like, no, maybe 20, 30 years ago, maybe before Harry Potter came out. Do your research. Please do your research. And adding on to Justine's, I am one of those agents who will not read your synopsis first. I actually read your query and your pages first, because I want to, if I enjoy your pages, read your story like a reader would. If I enjoy it as a reader, then I'm sure that other people will enjoy it as a reader too. So I actually look through, not necessarily your synopsis, unless I want to say I don't look through your synopsis unless I'm kind of teetering on the edge of whether or not I want to request more or not. So synopsis is really important, but your query is more important. So I forget what I was like. I was adding on to something Justine was saying, and I completely just lost my brain for a second. But that's the basis of what I wanted to say.
So is that all of
I was about to say, did we actually hit a point where we have nothing to say? Hold on.
We have one last question. We have one last question.
Do it. Let's do it.
I think this was Justine's. It was, if a writer doesn't have publishing credits, what should they put in the bio? Was that yours, Justine?
That was for someone I know.
Oh, sorry.
No, but it was my question. It was just, I'm asking for a friend. Sounds like I'm bragging, but yeah, no, seriously asking for a friend.
I tell people a lot of times, and I warn people all the time that I'm the black sheep in agenting. I don't read the synopsis first. I'd skim your query and I jump to the pages first. If your writing's good, then I'll go back and read your query and figure out what it's about. I'm totally the black sheep in publishing. No one else in my agency does this. I'm the weirdo. It's fine. But I actually really like to see quirky details about you. So agents, I told you, we're people and we want to relate to our clients on a personal level as well. We want to have at the very least, a really nice like business professional relationship with you. And we can't do that if we don't really have something in common and something we like. You know, if we don't like your writing, we're not going to sign you. All right. But I am more of like a personal person. I like to get to know my clients a lot. And a lot of people know that I have the fellowship. We're like a family. So constant support of each other. And I actually like to see like really quirky details. So like if you ride a horse, like awesome. You know, you raised like, you know, 5 dogs. Awesome. You rescue them. Cool. You know, like you're an ice skater and you spend your time, I don't know, like traveling to Colorado. I have no idea. Like, what do you do that makes you fun, that makes you quirky? Like, I kind of like to see those things because then I see, you know, the writer on the other side. And, you know, you can always put like any writing groups you belong to as well. Like if you belong to RWA, awesome, put that in there. You know, if you're a teacher, you belong to NCTE, awesome, put that in there. You know, writing credits aren't just awards. They're really not just awards. You know, you can say that you're just part of a writing group, a local writing group, and you have CPs and beta readers from there. You can say, you know, this is where you can pump up your platform on Twitter if you nothing else, or, you know, the fact that you have a website or the fact that you have an Instagram too. You know, I like to see like fun things about you or quirky things about you. I like to see that you're a person too, and let alone a person I can actually get along with. So yeah, that's what I say. At least I'm the black sheep. Can't verify that for anyone else.
I kind of like that the quirky bio. Like
I was like, somebody save Kelly. She doesn't know what else to say.
No. Okay, I'll save Kelly. I love saving Kelly. No, that's a romance movie name, obviously. No, but
Saving Kelly.
Yeah, Saving Kelly. But no, okay. I actually like quirky little bios too. Like, I don't necessarily want them to be like super long or anything. But if you're like, you know, I have like 3 kids or whatever, and on the weekends I like train goats. Like, that's pretty cool. Okay, like I want to know if you train goats.
I want to know how you trained goats. Anyway,
I just love that it says goats.
But
Ari loves goats, by the way.
But no, that's a legitimate thing. Like, you know, I think bio specifically, like if you don't have credits, totally fine. If you're just building your platform, also totally fine. You know, just like 2-3 lines. You know, who are you? What's the fun thing about you? I don't know. If you have credits, put them. You know, if you train goats, once again, put it in there. But like, seriously, I'm with Kelly on this. I'm saving Kelly. New movie title.
Yeah, and in your bio too. Oh my gosh, like it's so awesome if you can fit quirky stuff or your life with the tone of your book. So like Erica is my like comedy writer, and I totally like helped her kind of not necessarily craft her bio, but like I sent out a different bio than the one she sent me and crafted it around her humor. So she is my like extreme, like she's the funny one of the fellowship. I adore her. She writes romantic comedy like no one else. Not to say that my other fellowship members can't do that. I love you guys. Love you. If you're watching this, I don't hate you. I'm sorry. I love you. But legitimately I crafted her bio because she lives in a farmhouse with like bunch of different animals and like trips over her own 2 feet every day. So like all of that kind of rom-com stuff about her life was totally included in that bio. So like if you're writing a thriller, like, and you're like, yeah, I worked for the FBI for like 15 years. Like, yes, thriller that up. You know what I mean? Like if you can tone it to the actual like feeling of your manuscript, or if you're a fantasy writer and you're like, yeah, I go to Dragon Con all the time. Awesome. You know, I like to dress up as a dragon. Cool. Like I like that weird stuff. Dungeons and Dragons, whatever you want to put, you know, I have no idea, but like you play Fortnite, whatever it is. But if you can kind of adjust that to your genre, it works out in your favor, I think, at least usually. Yeah. Someone save Kelly, please. Hashtag romcom.
Yes. Oh, we have another hashtag, I think. Hashtag saving Kelly. We do this every time.
We can add that, seriously, because I just sent out a post about hashtag BAB because I thought of that as she was talking about don't send your manuscript to an agent without doing research. I'm like, don't send your baby in a blizzard.
Yes. Hashtag baby in a blizzard.
Hashtag.
Now we just need, so now every Craft Quest post needs to have saving Kelly as a hashtag.
Do you want saving Kelly or saving Agent Kelly?
When someone just went on a rant and they had no idea what to say and they just like exhausted all of their air and you're just like,
We all have
Hashtag
those
saving
moments.
Kelly.
Hashtag saving Kelly, exactly.
Kelly, you're gonna have. I'm just gonna make all my posts involve saving Kelly, and if they're not relevant, saving Kelly. Sorry.
All right. I guess that's fine.
Can I send
So
you
those
back
are-
manuscripts with hashtag saving Kelly?
Oh
No.
my god.
We've gone off the rails, guys.
Although that does bring up a valid question. Have you guys seen that book floating around hashtag murder trending or something like that? It's
What?
like got a hashtag murder trending. I don't know. It says
As a
it's
book
white.
title?
Yeah, and I wonder
Oh.
how they put that inside the book if they actually had the hashtag there too, even though that's a crime. But yeah, it's called. That's the title of the book.
Intriguing. I don't
They
know.
have
we
a
have to look into it.
hashtag.
You're
Yeah.
so fascinated by this, I can see.
I am.
You're like,
Research it, Ari, get back to us.
hashtag.
I discovered hashtags 2 years ago, and I use them now.
That explains a lot.
A little behind. All right, so that was all our questions for today. We can, if you guys want to keep talking, we can, but technically it's done.
It's over.
I think we might
All
need
right,
Maria to lead. I think we might need Maria.
Oh my god.
Okay, so
Do I need to step in and do Maria?
I'll do Maria. All right, guys, it's done. We've covered this. Okay, that's way too much.
No, I was about to say that is so not a good Maria impression.
Maria's like, all right, so we have to go. Justine, stop talking. Love you.
I don't know what you're talking about. Okay.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you got a lot of advice from all these tips. I'm terrible at this narrator thing, but we hope you learned everything you need to know today. We hope you learned what not to do, to Kelly especially, but to everyone and all the other agents.
If you ever have any other questions, you can always send them to CraftQuest and we can get you answers, or we can
Yes.
or if we have them on our own, we can always answer them for you. So there's that.
Also, please don't call out agents on Twitter and just ask them random questions. Let's not go there. I love answering your questions. Please don't call me out on Twitter and just be like, "Hey, Kelly, blah 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 blah. Here's my question," and I'm like, if I'm not doing an ask agent session,
not you.
Yeah.
Definitely not
and
you.
please don't check in with your query via Twitter and call me out and be like, "Hey, it's been since September. I haven't heard from you." No, don't do it. I'm like, I will answer you, but please, for the love of God, don't do it.
Yeah, and don't do that in Ask Agent sessions either. Ask Agents are a good time for questions, but not calling out, asking about queries. That's not a thing to do.
Which, if it helps you guys, I will do an Ask Agent session soon. Just keep your eyes out. Anyways, we will let Ari continue with closing the session down after
Terribly.
At some point.
Do you have any? Okay, I'm just gonna say this now. It's like court. Do you have anything else to say? Anybody?
Follow the rules.
I knew it. Someone was gonna say something. All right, guys. We'll put together a tweet that's a summary of this session so that you have a cheat sheet of what to do and what not to do. And we hope you enjoyed today's session. So if you want to check out any of our social media links, they're down below. You can find them there, including Kelly's, but do not stalk her. Do not
Stalking
stalk.
is okay. Stalking is okay.
Bad stalking is not okay.
Don't bother her.
No, stalking to find out what I'm asking for, my manuscript wish list or genres or anything of the sort to query me is fine. Stalk all the way, but don't be creepy about it.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next month.
And thank you for joining us, Kelly.
Bye.
Thank you, Kelly.
Kelly,